grab me a beer and grab him a coke. We bout to sit for an hour, bullshit and tell jokes. And please don't mix it up, cause he done sobered up. Brandon T Comedy on your social media feeds. And Brandon Taz if it's your ex drinking buddy. Brandon Taz if it's your ex drinking buddy. Brandon Taz if it's your ex drinking buddy. Brandon Taz if it's your ex drinking buddy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. I'm your host, Brennan Tassif. If you're new to the show, quick rundown of the show. I used to be everyone's favorite drinking buddy. Used to do drugs, drink, get in trouble, hang out with friends, and reminisce about old stories. That is still one of my favorite things to do, even though I am sober now. But I will normally be joined by a guest. This week is no exception. All the way from New York City / London, England, Raphael Perahia.
Hey, Brandon.
What's up, man?
Good, buddy.
So, comedian, actor, what else? What else is on the docket?
Writer, director. Yeah, I started writing a couple years ago.
Okay.
So I have like a couple of plays under my belt. One of which I'm like waiting to put on, which is about. It's like the first true story I've written.
Okay.
And it's about like this. It's this story I read about in the paper about this double agent who was like a Spanish guy during World War II, and they called him Garbo because he was like a very good actor.
Yeah.
And he basically, so his big claim to fame was like he convinced the Nazis that Normandy was like a fake, and there was going to be a real invasion in Calais in like 10 days. So,
yeah.
So the Germans like never really hit Normandy with the power they should have. But the play is about him and his Spanish wife because they came over and she hated it in England. And she almost sabotaged him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like in order to go
home. That
home.
sounds like a great play.
It's a great story. I hope it'll be a great play.
Yeah. So you, let's give the audience a little bit of a backstory. Everyone can tell, because I said it, and also your accent.
Yeah.
That you are in New York City by way of London.
Yeah.
So how did that... Because when I first met you, we were talking outside of Broadway Comedy Club.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned... You were like, yeah, I used to do comedy, and then I kind of stopped for a little while. I moved back home, and then now I'm doing comedy again.
Yeah.
Which I found super interesting because that's kind of different parallels, but that's still my same story.
Yeah.
I started comedy in 2009, then some things happened, and then from 2014, 15 till about 2018, I didn't touch a microphone except a couple times.
Yeah.
And then I missed it so much, and the listeners know my story, but then I got back into it.
Yeah.
And so when you had told me that, I was like, oh, that's super interesting.
Yeah.
Like, how did that happen?
So I started in Atlanta. I was at college.
Okay. Where did you go to school?
At Emory.
Okay.
And then I did, like, first gig I bombed. And then second gig I really prepared. And I did, like, Laughing Skull. And they invited me back for, like, the weekend.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like,
because Laughing Skull is a big deal.
It's a great, yeah. And I was like, oh, this is amazing.
And that was only the second time you had done comedy?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I remember, you know that feeling when the first time you get a laugh? And
yeah,
I was like, I could do this forever. This is amazing. And then I came back to England and I just started bombing.
So that was after school you went back to England?
Yeah, I went back to England. I was doing like 3 years and I was like on and off. Like I was like some days good, some days bad. Like I just wasn't getting it. And then, so then I stopped stand up and I started taking these like clown classes.
Okay.
With like, so this teacher who taught Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yeah.
And so I went to do the summer course with him. Which was in Paris, and I was bombing. And on the last day, he like hit me with some super like real shit. And he was like, "You don't take your ideas seriously. You don't take yourself seriously on stage. And if you continue like this, you'll never be a clown." And I'm like, in my red note, like I was like, it was brutal.
So he's telling you this as you're dressed in full
like,
clown
so
garb.
like I'm in short shorts, a robe, a red nose. And I'm like desperately trying to be funny, and I'm not funny like at all.
Okay, so you're not like out there doing material. You're like just doing
like trying to do like clown numbers.
Yeah.
And this guy like, so he's like a guru. Like his name is Philippe Gaulier.
Shout out Philippe.
And he like
not
he'll
even
have
try
you
to pronounce that last name.
Yeah, he'll have you on stage, and he has like a little drum on his stomach. And firstly, if he lifts his drumstick, everyone in the workshop starts whistling. And starts like going, and it means like you suck.
Oh,
and you
really?
have to change what you're doing because otherwise he's going to beat that drum. And when he beats the drum, like that's your stage time is over.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And then he'll be like,
I wish we could do that.
Brennan, like, yeah, right? He'll be like, Brennan, was Raphael awful or was he fucking awful? And you have to be like, yeah, he was fucking awful.
Wow.
Because if you go, no, he's good, he'll be like, okay, Raph, like, do 5 more minutes. And then, like, it's, super awkward. Yeah. And then he'll be like, Brennan, was he, like, what do you think? Was he awful or fucking awful? You're like, yeah, he's fucking awful. But the standard was super high. And it was like very critical. But having said that, like when you did well, you felt what it feels like to do really well.
Yeah, especially in that environment.
Yeah. And so I ended up studying with the guy for like 2 years.
And this is after school. This is you've already done.
Yeah, 2015, 2013.
That's got to be frustrating to be like, I got basically passed at Laughing Skull on my second try, and now I'm getting railroaded at clown school.
But it was also like I had lost my playfulness with it, and I wasn't having fun on stage.
You started becoming like jaded.
Yeah, and I like people weren't booking me, and I was like that guy who's like, why am I not getting booked? But like,
I know that guy. I am that guy.
Yeah,
but like their problem.
Yeah, I was like, but I was also like not getting any laughs. So I was like,
they don't understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And and I would like try new material every time. Like I never, I don't know. It was things were getting a bit messy. And then I studied with this guy, and I really felt good about it. And I came back to London, and I couldn't do it. I stopped performing for about 3 or 4 years now.
Okay.
And then recently, I just like since COVID, I was like, you know what? I really want to get back, and I feel like I have some stuff to say, and I also feel like I'm able to be self-critical in a positive way now.
That's a big thing.
Yeah, because I think that, like, it's really easy when you're doing well, but, like, when you don't do well and you're trying to figure out why, it's very easy to be like, oh, I suck and this sucks and I don't want to do this. But it's much better to be like, all right, what went wrong there?
Yeah, how can I fix this?
Yeah.
That's something I struggle with because I always want my material to say something. Like, I always want it to have levels. I always want it to be like, oh, it's funny on the surface because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But I also want it to say something underneath. And you've seen my set a few times. Like, I talk about my scars and my drug addiction and my alcoholism and stuff. So it's like, yeah, it's funny on the surface. But then also, if you're going through something like that, it means more to you.
Yeah.
But the problem that I run into is sometimes I'll be sitting with Savannah, my girlfriend, who's been on the podcast before, huge crowd favorite. But she'll say, why don't you say this? And it'll be... like, as someone who goes on stage, you'd be like, I would never, that's so generic or so hacky. Like, I would never say that. But then I'll think about it more, like you're saying, and be like, I mean, if I did say that, it would get laughs. And I've tried stuff that she's mentioned, and it's gotten laughs. And part of me hates myself for doing it.
It's tough, isn't it? It's tough. Like, I always find it, like, if there's something that you're like, oh, this is an easy thing, but at the same point, like, your job is to get laughs.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, Philippe would come up to us before clown. Like, he would come down from, like, the first year classes to the second years. Like, second years when you do clown. And he would go, are you going to be funny today? And you'd be like, I don't know, Philippe, but, like, I hope so. And they go, it's your job to be funny. And so that, for me, is, like, what I try and, like, bring, like... It doesn't mean like you should say like deep stuff, but it's like you gotta be entertaining. You gotta,
at the same time. That's where being high energy has really helped me because some of the stuff I'll talk about is super dark, but it's like when you're being goofy on stage and stuff, and like running around the stage and like using your facial expressions and stuff, that can really help because. And I've talked about this before, but I walk this fine line between truth telling and joke telling.
Yeah.
Where because I tell stories, and some of my stories, I'm like, I'm not changing it. This is what happened. And then a lot of comics, especially back in Florida, a lot of the comics that I respected and trusted would be like, but it's funnier if you say this. And I go, yeah, but that's not what happened. And they go, but that's not the point.
Yeah, difficult call.
And that's where I get kind of...
difficult call.
Because I want to be, I want people when they come to see me to know everything I'm saying is true.
Yeah.
And it actually happened. But how true does it have to be to where you lose credibility? And when does it? Why does it matter?
Yeah, I don't know if it, like, I think the truth is the funny thing.
Yeah.
And so like I always like I learned this thing about 2 years ago. I wish I had known it sooner. But whenever anyone criticized my work, I was like, all right, there's a leak in the work.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean I need to plug it with what you're giving me.
Yeah.
I just need to plug that leak.
There's something wrong, but
Yeah. Like I could get to a punchline quicker. I could get to a thing quicker. Okay, I might not use your thing, but like I see what you're saying.
Absolutely.
But yeah, like so at this Goliath school, like you like because of the intensity of it, you'd have people like by Friday night. So every Friday you had to present, and you had to like prepare all week. And then the whole school would watch, like each year would watch. So there'd be 2 years and like 60 or 80 people. Like you'd have like 80 people audience.
Yeah.
And like,
and then you got to get up and
you got to be funny.
Oh, you awful. Or
yeah.
Fucking
Yeah,
awful.
exactly. And like, so you'd have like that mix of either you did like, and it's never in between. You never do okay.
Yeah.
You either do amazing or fucking awful.
I've been in those rooms before.
Yeah.
Where everyone's crushing. You're like, man, I'm going to kill it. And then you get up there and just bomb. And you're
Oh,
like,
God.
what the fuck happened?
Yeah. So like after that, the Friday nights, like drinking sessions, because it was like a town outside of Paris, so there was nothing there. There was just like one bar that we kept open till 2 a.m.
Okay.
And things would get like everybody was mid-20s. Some people were like in their 30s, but and like some people were like a little younger. But like anybody can go to the school. You just need to go.
Yeah.
Like, you just need to pay the money and go. There's no like audition process.
Well, and it's one of those things too where either you're coming off the high of killing,
yeah,
or you're coming off the incredible sadness of bombing.
Yeah,
So
you're
either
raw.
way, you want to drink.
You're raw. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like some of these nights would go on to like 8 a.m. and obviously like everyone was hooking up. And the funniest thing to me was like the teacher liked knowing what the hell was going on in his class. So his wife would come up to like one of the girls I was friends with, and depending on like how much gossip she gave her on Monday morning, she would get cigarettes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like that was like the problem was like if you hooked up with anyone in school, like you couldn't tell anyone, but also by Monday everybody knew.
Everyone knew.
And like
so it's like high school all over
yeah,
again.
and if not, like Philippe would be like, "So, Raph, I heard you and Clementine this weekend, like in front of the class," and you're like, "Oh fuck, like,
How did you know?
Yeah,
He's got a mole on the inside of his wife.
Yeah, exactly.
So what? You did the school, and then what did you want to happen with this? Did you just do it just to do it, or were you like, I want this to go somewhere? Or?
Yeah, it was like a bit of both, but it was like I realized studying with him for a month that if I didn't study with this guy, I should quit.
Okay.
Because I was like bombing,
Yeah.
and this guy was the solution in the sense that like I couldn't keep going the way I was going because I would never have made it.
Yeah.
And I would never have been like I just would never have gotten past that stage. Because I knew that he was a genius in the sense of he tells you what the audience is thinking, and he reads the audience.
Yeah, and that's something that's hard because we were talked about this the other day. But when you write a bit and you're like, "This is gonna kill," I think this is hilarious, and then you try it and it doesn't work. It's like no understanding the audience's thought process is incredibly difficult.
Yeah,
so anybody who can,
it's like, and also he'll tell you whether they're bored or not. He might not tell you how to save it writing wise, but he can tell you like why it didn't work acting wise. And like when you're in the room and it's not working, it's really fucking clear. Like we all feel that vibe, just like plummet. He would have like some insults that were fucking brutal though. He goes to one kid. This was like 2014 when the Malaysian airline disappeared.
Yeah.
And he goes, if it's a Malaysian airline, poof, it lands on the school. This is like 3 days after it's disappeared. He's like, it lands on the school. Good publicity for the school, but it kills these 2 actors. Would you say, no, Philippe, it's too much? Or in a way, good?
wow.
And everyone was like,
That's
yeah, in a
brutal.
way, good. Yeah.
Oh my god.
So like
Philippe, it's good.
Yeah, no, it'd be good. Like that was kind of what you were dealing with, and but I knew like I would learn something with him. Like,
And so that was the moment, and I've noticed this in doing the show and listening to other podcasts and just being a student of comedy for as long as I've been watching comedy for more than 20 years. Like I love stand up. And it's something I've always noticed is a lot of times when you hear interviews, everyone always has that moment. Yeah. And that's what separates people doing open mics and people actually pursuing it as a full-time career is that moment of, so for me, it was when I got sober again and I was like, if I don't find something to do that I'm passionate about, I might just kill my, like I can't stand this.
Yeah.
For you, it was going to the class and you realized, well, if I want to do this, I have to stay here.
Yeah.
Like I have to.
Yeah. There was like it was a life choice.
Yeah.
And it was, to me, what was funny about it, or not funny, but it was like interesting, was like I was always funny when I tried to be serious.
Yeah.
And like it was brutal. So we had a thing called melodrama where you were supposed to be like poor Paris people and tragedy just hits you over and over again. So we had a thing where, and I hadn't really been funny in the school up till now, like on and off, like moments. We had an improvisation, and the improv was this girl goes to see a flower seller. She buys a flower because her mother is coming out of hospital. She goes to the hospital. The doctor tells her mother's not coming out of hospital. Her mother has passed away. And then she goes back to the flower seller, and they have like this beautiful moment. And it's supposed to be a moment where everybody in the audience is like crying by how sad this is. So the guys who, I was being the nurse, the guy who went on first was the flower seller, and people were kind of giggling with him.
Okay.
And so I'm backstage, and I'm like, all right, I'm a fucking, like, they're going to start crying. Yeah. Like, I'm gonna tell her. This. Yeah, like, I'm going to say, like, the mother has cancer, and, like, we're going to go deep. We're going to go deep.
Yeah.
I walk out on stage, and he has, like, a little microphone on, Philippe. And I walk out, I get about halfway through the stage, and I'm like, and I just hear,
it was him laughing?
Yeah, and he never laughs. Like, he laughs at nothing. And the whole audience is like creasing it. And I'm like, guys, no, like, I'm going to tell this girl, like, her mother has cancer. Like, no, it's not funny. Like, not funny at all. Like,
we're getting super serious,
yeah,
guys.
Like, this is not, like, I'm happy that you're laughing, but, like, not now. Like, please. And so it was like a huge lesson of like, all right, how can I, and then now, like, when I do stand-up, I'm like, how can I bring that level of seriousness into it, where it's like, for me, it's real, but for you guys, it's comedy.
I think that's why you and I click so well, is because I have that same, I would use different wording, but it's that same mindset of, this is, if you looked at this stuff that I'm talking about on paper, you would go,
not funny at all.
This is horrific.
Yeah.
But when the way I do it on stage, it's to get you to laugh at it.
Yeah. It brings a lightness and a freedom to it.
Oh, yeah, almost.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad you said that, because that's something that I've noticed too. And this happened to us at Broadway the other day, where someone went up and then they just stopped in the middle of their set and were asking, because I had mentioned jail.
Yes.
And she said, "Oh, you've been to prison." And I said, "Well, no, jail not." And I was being
you were dead serious,
genuine and serious. I said, "No, I've been to jail, not prison." And she goes, "Well, what's the difference?" And then I started to explain it to her, not even trying to be funny.
You were just being,
and everyone started laughing, and I was like, "Wait, what?"
Because it's like you're a clown.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like, so like my friend Rafa, who was the guy who was like the flower seller, he was never funny in clown. And then one day he came out, he just came out from the back for the stage, and like just before something started, and he just goes, he was German, he goes, "Where are my shoes?" And everybody started laughing. And it was like genuinely sincere guy looking for his shoes. But because he wasn't trying to be funny, he was just being himself.
And
it's like, it's simple, and it's fucking hard to like do that, and to get to that point where you're like, okay, I'm so comfortable on stage that I'm not trying to be funny, I'm just trying to be myself, but myself is funny. That has been like a lesson that I'm like still trying to
hold on
that balance. And like like that, but that moment is very kind of important, where you're like, okay, I'm gonna take it seriously, and I'm gonna like be committed to it as well, in a way. Like, I think also I love it as a genre, and I respect it. It's very like intense to kind of to do it, and to do it in a way that you feel like is doing it the form justice.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is to fully commit. Because there are times, especially early when I first started stand-up, and then also when I came back, where I would see comics go up, and I'm like, I can do that, like what they're doing. But then when you actually try certain things, you're like, oh, I'm not fully committed to this, because if you have any doubt in your head whatsoever, it's not going to work. No, you're fucked.
And you see, the audience sees it. There's like a
they
moment
can feel it as soon as you start.
Philippe would say that at times. He's like, he doubts. Look, he doubts.
Oh, okay,
like, you see it. Like, you see it. Okay, like, and it's like, it's like a cancer. Like, the minute you doubt, they doubt, it's over.
And that's always the hardest thing for me when I write new material. So this is what I started doing now is I will write down a premise or like just jot something down. Yeah. So that's the one thing I noticed is that if you doubt something, even if you think it's good,
yeah, it shows.
It shows because I told you about the bit I wrote about the football thing, and I was like, oh, this is gonna kill. And as soon as I started it, I doubted it, and then
it's over.
It was 3 minutes of just.
Oh, you don't pull the shoot? I pull the shoot.
I don't.
So I don't. I had a thing about Prince Harry.
Yeah,
and I did it.
Yeah, tell this story because this is
I did it at like a black club, and the minute I mentioned Prince Harry, I noticed everybody in the room was just like, I couldn't give a shit about this.
Yeah,
guy.
what's your point? Yeah,
they didn't give a fuck, and like it's funny because in other clubs they was like really into it, and it's like the difference about Americans and British people.
Yeah,
and like.
And they get super into it.
Yeah. And so about the first joke in, I was expecting it to kill, and it just got like, like it got like nothing.
Yeah.
And so I just literally like pulled the shoot. I was like, all right, I'm not doing any more of this.
See, and that's my problem is, that's what I was going to say before we got interrupted by all the hecticness. Now I've gotten better at just writing out a premise.
Yeah.
And then I will try it on stage once.
Yeah.
Just as a freeform thing.
Yeah.
Because then
it's loose.
I don't know what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
So we can kind of, and I record every set, so we can kind of just play with it.
Yeah.
So like all the stuff I did at the show that we were at together, all that stuff, for the most part, I had written at Central Park like a few hours before.
Nice. Okay.
But I was just kind of like, oh, these are interesting ideas. And then I got on stage and I just kind of did it as like a free-flowing thing where I was like, this is how I thought of it when I was walking through Central Park, so this is how I'll say it. Because what's happened to me in the past is I've written it out full form before I've even tried it. And then when I go to try it...
You're not loose.
Exactly.
You're not loose,
And the audience can feel that. And my other big problem is if it starts to bomb, I'm like, well, I've written 2 minutes of material on this, so I'm doing all 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm just free-flowing, I can get out easy. Like, it's like, oh, I don't... If no one's laughing, then I don't have anything else to say.
Yeah, that was like, to me, what was really interesting about Goliath was that, like, I learned there that the writing was not so important. It was more the delivery. Having said
100%,
that,
100%.
now I'm like, they're both. It's
Yeah.
50-50 because if you don't have the writing pat, you can have like you can't necessarily rely on your skills as a clown.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they don't laugh and then you're in the shit. And you have to get out of the shit, you know, like.
And that's something I noticed as well is so I will record it and then I'll go back and listen to it and then I'll write it out. So I always try it once free form and then I go, okay, this worked. Because I was telling you there was something that Savannah had pointed out to me before any other comic. She pointed it out. She goes, hey, sometimes you pull the microphone away when you're saying something. And I go, yeah, that's because it's not a written line. So I use it as a crutch. If I pull the microphone away and I don't get a laugh, it's because I pulled the microphone away.
Yeah.
She was like, yeah, but imagine instead of just the first row that heard you laughing, imagine everyone heard you and they're laughing. And I was like, oh, yeah. So now I always keep the mic up.
That sounds like an amazing audience member because it's like sometimes you need somebody to show you what you're doing. And you see it like from the outside. Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. I did it like as a throwaway, like, oh, I'm so cool. Let me just throw the mic away while I say something. Yeah. And she's like, nah. But the people in the front row laughed because what you said was funny, but no one else heard it because you pulled the mic away. Yeah, and then you're like, all right, that's why I'm not getting the laugh. Yeah, that's why it's not hitting as hard. Yeah. Because I noticed that there was like, I mean, I find the game of it so fascinating. Oh my God. And the details, there was a guy who was doing a bit, and it was very funny. And the premise was like that he was dating someone, and instead of ghosting him, she wrote back to one of his message, unsubscribe. Yeah, it was a really funny bit. But the way he was delivering it, it was like he was unsubscribing from her. So he looked like the asshole. And so I said to him like, "Yo, that bit is a great bit, but." It needs to be clear that she's unsubscribing from you because then you look like you're empathetic. We like exactly. You. And it's like the minute we don't like you, you can tell like unless you're like playing the villain, and some people are great at that. Yeah. And like then we like you to be the villain, but like other times we need you to be you're the nice guy. We need you to be the nice guy. Yeah. And like it's such a tightrope walk, and it's just like. it's easier to be the audience member. Like that was like my thing when I did clown at Gaudier, was like other people would go up and they bomb. And I'm like, oh, okay, I know exactly what I'll do.
Yep.
I get up. And then when you get up, it's like 50 people looking at you and you're expected to be funny.
Yeah.
It's a different feeling.
It's so bizarre because I've been at shows and watched people bomb. And
Yeah.
I was like, man, when I go up, I'm going to destroy. Like, I see everything they're doing wrong. And then you get up there, and this has always been my Achilles heel, is if my first joke or if my first two jokes don't land, I'm fucked.
Oh.
Because I'm already an anxious person. I
Yeah.
already get in my
Yeah.
head. So if I get up there, and I've been trying really hard the last couple years to endear myself to the audience, because I've had shows before where it's like, okay, I only have 10 minutes, so I'm going to do all my crazy intense stuff.
Yeah.
Because that I've got like 20 or 30 minutes of material on that, and that's the stuff I like to do.
Yeah.
The problem is if you don't ingratiate yourself to the audience, they just think you're a psycho, to your point about the villain thing.
So there's ways I've found of dealing with that.
Yes.
The two things, one is like, so I have this story where I go very loud. I pretend I'm like the crazy guy on the subway.
Yeah.
If I'm going super angry, the angrier and louder I go, then I can shift that to the more quiet and less movement I go afterwards.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So
yeah.
I bring that shift, so they go, oh my, this guy's insane. And they're like, no, he's fine.
He's just doing
Yeah. And so, for me, what works is that the yelling and the like bigness scares them.
Yeah.
And it changes the energy of the room. And so
Yes,
whenever
it
whenever I feel like I'm bombing, I'm like, all right, how can I change the energy in this room? So it's like, if it needs to be a scream, it's a scream, but it's like, all right, and then we'll come back.
Yeah.
Because it's like two things. One, they need to know that you're bombing.
Yeah, you have to
acknowledge
accept it
emotionally.
There's a comic I know from Florida, love him to death, one of my closest friends. He said, Marcus Crespo, for those of you listening, he's been on this podcast a bunch, but he'll literally say, oh, that didn't work, or that was stupid.
Yeah.
And then everyone laughs.
Yeah.
Because he's acknowledging,
and that's it. Like, because like Philippe would have a phrase which was great, which was the audience, if they don't laugh, the audience is from Belgium and they don't understand your comedy.
Okay.
But it's okay. Like, you're gonna break them down. So like but you have to acknowledge that they don't understand your comedy.
Yeah, if you don't acknowledge there's a problem.
Yeah.
'Cause we've both seen people get off stage and be like, man, I killed it. And you're like, the fuck show
No,
are you watching?
yeah, exactly. Like, and I'll do the opposite. Like, sometimes people will be like, you killed it. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I felt like
I'm that all the time because
Yeah.
I'm super competitive and I'm
like,
very
there's
hard
like
on myself.
20 seconds in the middle when nobody was laughing.
So
and
I'm
people
like, well, yeah, the opener did well and like the closer did pretty okay, but like, what about that whole middle part for 12 minutes where it was just like kind of chuckles?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and so it's weird. It's weird having that like point of view on yourself, but I do think there are ways that you can save the situation and you can change it, because the audience wants to be entertained.
Yeah.
They're just
that's why they're there, yeah.
Yeah, like even in their roughness or their like shittiness. Sometimes like I did an open mic this week where there was a guy who had lost his fantasy football game, and so his whole fantasy football group came to watch him, and they were as nervous as he was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you could tell like the vibe was just weird.
Yeah.
But even them, like, you could get something. But yeah, it's like I noticed it at the school, and then I started to learn, like after I left the school I started to learn it.
Okay. Well, and there's one more thing I wanted to touch on. You had mentioned just the delivery versus the writing, and it's something that's interesting to me about the delivery aspect is there are certain bits, because I'm high energy when I'm on stage, so there's certain bits I do where I will do an act out without even knowing I'm doing an act out.
Yeah.
Because I'm just going.
You're in it, yeah.
And there was one, I have a whole bit, and I actually have merch about it and everything, but there's a bit where I talk about basically stalking my ex-fiance. And then the punchline to the bit is, just remember next time you tell someone you're going to love them forever and always, then I pause, I look at a face, like there's no watch, but I look at my wrist and I go, it's still forever and always. But that whole thing came about as just like happenstance.
Yeah.
And then Chris Buck, a really good comic from Jacksonville, was like, hey, look, because I did the joke a couple more times. He goes, hey, you don't do the wrist thing anymore. And I didn't even know what he was talking about. Because the first time you did the bit, you looked at your wrist like you had a watch on.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit. Like that one little thing about because the joke never hit as hard after.
No.
And I couldn't figure it out. He goes, you paused so the audience could catch up to you.
Yeah, yeah.
You looked at nothing on your wrist and said it.
Yeah.
Then you said, "Well, I just checked. It's
Yeah.
still always and forever." And I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh my god, that literally like that 4
It's a little
seconds."
thing, but also it's like really interesting because you could be trying to do a thing where you go really big and you make movements and you're big and like blah blah blah, and people couldn't laugh, and you just do that simple thing.
That
you
was
look
yeah.
at your watch and you think, and it's really interesting because like I've noticed that when I'm watching stand up here is that some people don't know the power they have.
Yeah.
And they move around a lot. And I don't want to be the guy who says it, but it's like, just stand still because we're with you.
Yeah.
But you do that one movement and everybody knows what you're doing.
There's also jokes where like you were talking about with the yelling where I would yell at certain points.
Yeah.
And I would never get quiet. I would just speak in my regular voice.
Yeah.
And then Buck, to his credit again, was like, "Hey, did you ever think about maybe yelling this line?
Yeah.
But then whispering the next line?"
Yeah.
And like just little things like that.
It's that contrast.
Yeah. And
Because
that makes all the difference in the world.
I think, and this might not be true, but I think a lot of people will come up to me like after a show and be like, "You're funny because your accent is really funny and people like your accent." And I'm
You had
like,
that whole bit about
yeah. And like, I think that the reason that they say that is because people don't study the contrast of the tone of voice.
Mm-hmm.
And the contrast in the tone of voice is really funny.
Yeah.
But it's not something that people know. Like, so they don't see the punchline. So they're like, "Why are they laughing?" "Oh, your accent." That's what I think. Or it's that my accent's funny and I just like
Stop it away.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening? So you were at the school for about 2 years, and then did you go back to London?
So then I went back to London, and I did the Edinburgh Festival. I had this show with like a few characters.
Now that festival, I've heard stories. That's more of a.
It's intense.
Yeah, it's
intense.
like a storytelling, or because the comedy over there is a lot different than it
So
is here.
there's a lot more wacky stuff.
Okay,
and people like the wacky stuff.
People always just say it's a lot different, so I'm not sure.
It's so the festival is like everyone can go.
Yeah,
and they sell it as like you're likely to get successful. You're really not. Like it's like you have to have like a very good you have to have a very good idea, very good title, and a very good show.
Okay.
And you might need a really good PR team if you're like if you want to make it. And it costs a lot of money, and it's essentially, but there's some amazing stuff, and there's people like Flight of the Conchords, Fleabag, like all of those things got big because they had a very big Edinburgh festival.
Okay.
I was kind of on the other side of things in that I would do free shows with a bucket. So you pass around a bucket, and that's kind of good because you know how well you did.
Yeah, exactly.
Because like people come, and if you kill, you get a lot of money, and if you bomb, you get nothing.
Yeah.
And you get good at like it's a great place for a young comic to get like 5 or 6 shows a day and get audiences and just like
people who want to watch stand.
Yeah, and mind their
people
craft.
are there for the festival.
Yeah, and it rains all the fucking time, and so the festival is on like from 12 p.m. to 4 in the morning.
Oh wow.
Yeah, people are doing shows all the time, and they're good. Like there's some really good stuff and there's some interesting stuff, and like it was interesting because I helped learn like what I liked.
Yeah.
And so that was when I saw like other students of like Gaulier, and I was like, "Oh, I really like what they're doing here." And I, like even if I don't like them, I appreciate them.
Yeah.
And like there's certain comics that are a bit bizarre that get very successful from it, and then there's certain people who like I've seen people break. Like,
oh really?
Yeah, well, because like one friend of mine, she had a good show, but she had a shit time slot, and she wasn't good at flyering, and her show didn't have that interesting a title, and so she couldn't get people.
Title, you legitimately mean just the title of the show?
Yeah, so like I had a friend who put on a show called Edinburgh Must Sees at the Free Fringe, and we packed it out every day.
Yeah,
we had no.
See.
Yeah, but we had no must sees. We just had like other open mic comics, but like we packed out.
That's
40
when people
people
are barking in New York, and they're like,
yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld might show up.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
"You're full of
exactly,
shit."
exactly. But like for a free show, everybody came.
Yeah,
and like, so we did really well. I mean, like from that show, like we had like good audiences, but like most audiences at Edinburgh is like 6 or 8 people sometimes.
Okay,
so you really have to get the title right.
You have to make it something people want to go see.
Yeah, and like my biggest regret is that my two characters, like one of them was like basically like Scarface and the other one was like Prince. But I named the show The Wedding Guest. If I called that show Scarface versus Prince, I would have packed out the place.
Yeah.
I'm still regretting it today because I'm like, that's it. It's as simple as that. Like, it's a free show. People see that, they're like, yeah, I'll watch that.
Yeah. I don't even know what that is, but
yeah, exactly. I don't get. Yeah, exactly.
Characters.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in. But like, that was. And it teaches you like about marketing and about all of those things, but it's a very difficult festival because you're gigging all the time, and you're flyering, which is like like barking, and it's soul destroying because like people don't like it's very difficult to get people, and like after you fly it for an hour and then you have to do your show, it's a difficult thing.
It can wear on you. It can be a lot.
Yeah. Having said that, your rate of improvement and I would watch like 3 to 5 shows a day, and you see so many different things, and some of it
people don't. And this is something that kind of bothers me about the New York open mic scene is that everyone comes, does their time, and leaves. I understand. Everyone's busy.
I watch everyone if I can.
Same way.
If I can,
I'll watch as much as I can because it's like you can learn a lot from watching other comics, like they're and not
even when they're bad though, because like I'm like, what is my criticism of them?
Like, what would I do differently?
Yeah.
Like what? And that's actually something that happened to me is because I go to the Stand a lot to just hang out, really.
Yeah.
I just like being around. Like I said, comedy,
you love comedy.
And the Cellar's a little too far away, so I go to the Stand a lot. It's
and it's not a hang. Yeah, it's not. The Cellar's not really a hang. It's like
like unless you're a paid regular there, it's not a place to. But so anyway. But every time I go, a lot of times I'll go to the back to watch a show, and there's been a few times where you watch the comics and you go, okay, I know, because I've been doing it long enough to where I think I have my voice. Like
you know
I'm
where
trying
you're
to be modest, but I know exactly what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm never in fear that I'm going to watch someone and be like, oh, did I subconsciously take their material?
Yeah.
Because everything I do is based on stories that have happened to me.
Yeah.
So I'm never worried about that. But I've seen some where I'm just like they are, and this is at a prime comedy club on 16th Street. They pack out the rooms.
Oh yeah,
people are there to see comedy, and I've seen people just eat it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
and I'm like looking around, and I'm like, is this the audience? But then you really, like you said, when you observe it and watch it and kind of like think about it, you're like, oh no, it's because they're talking about this specific thing and nobody is relating to it.
Yeah.
And some of my stuff is not very relatable, but I act it out almost as if you're watching it on TV.
Yeah.
Like I give you so much detail that you're like, okay, I can see myself there.
Well, and also I think sometimes to me, like the what you said about like jail and prison was funny because I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know
another
that.
thing, yeah, if it's
and
something I can
it's like
point
something
out.
where you're like, okay, like, bring me into your world, but, like, give me a map. Like, let me, like, because, like, sometimes your world, like, you might think, like, I grew up, like, yesterday, I was hanging out with a comic, and he says something about this show, Ed and Eddie, or something like that.
Ed and Eddie.
Yeah. Never heard of it.
Yeah.
Whoosh. And he said something about a mattress, and him and the waitress started laughing, and I was like, I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. And, like, in England, and so then he was talking about Oasis.
Okay.
And I was like, oh yeah, Champagne Supernova. He was like, no, I know Wonderwall, that's it. And I was like, you don't know. And I went through like 10 songs.
Yeah.
I was like, what? You didn't, like, in my head, I was like, you didn't have a childhood. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And like, so
what
like,
were your parents doing?
Yeah, like, so like in England, like we started drinking at like 13 or 14.
Okay.
And we would have we'd have these things called piss ups, which was.
Yeah, you had this written down. I want to know what this was.
Yeah, so piss ups is basically a pregame, but when you're like 14 and there's no game. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, so you would invite like, some guy would know, like, because I went to an all boys school as well.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. So like some guy
was it a religious school or just an all boys school?
It was an all boys school. Like, I guess all British schools are Catholic or Christian. Maybe not Catholic, like Protestant.
Yeah, they're not Catholic.
Yeah, no. Like, I'm Jewish, so.
Fun fact.
Yeah.
That's where the Anglican Church came from because King George or
wanted
Henry
wanted to get divorced. He wanted to get divorced. Yeah, so these are like, so the posh school, my parents were not from England, and like my dad was American, that's how like I live here.
Okay.
But like they wanted to send their kid to like a good English school.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so the best ones are like all boys schools or all girls schools. and the vibe is like completely different. I don't
Yeah.
think my parents had any idea. Like my mom grew up in Madrid, my dad grew up in New York. Like,
Oh wow, so
they
that's gonna
didn't
be
know they didn't know what the hell they had like put me up for.
Yeah.
And me and my brother. But like, so basically we were like 14 years old. we had a liquor store, or like we call them off license, and they sell booze.
You call them what?
Off license.
Off
Which
license?
I think license is pubs and off license is like liquor stores.
Okay.
But we used to call them off licenses, and we go to the off license, and because the drinking age is 18 in England, there was a guy named Sonny who was like a Sikh.
Sonny. Fucking Sonny.
So it was Sonny's, and it was a Sikh guy, and Sonny would let you buy booze if nobody was in the shop.
Really?
Yeah. So, but then at some point we showed up and Sonny wasn't there, and it
Oh,
was like
no.
a different owner. And then I waited for everyone to leave, and I was like, "Do you think if there's no one here, we could just buy booze?" And he like looked at me, he was like, "Yeah, sure."
Oh really?
Yeah.
So they didn't care.
Nobody cared. Like it was. I know. Like we would buy like Smirnoff Ice and Bacardi Breezer
Oh,
and all
yeah.
that like sugary shit. But like we
And
would
you're
have
14 at the time?
14. Yeah. The first time I got drunk was at my bar mitzvah.
Okay.
Like and
Bar mitzvah was 13 or 14?
13.
13. All right.
yeah, I just like I had like a vision of what drinking was, and I was like, I'm all for this.
Yeah. So
Like,
wait, what happened at the bar mitzvah? Did you sneak something in? Did your friends
No.
bring you something? Like,
I would go to the bar, but I was also like kind of a like pushy kid. I was like, it's my bar mitzvah, like just give me a drink. And they were like, yeah, sure, all right, fine.
Okay.
Yeah. And they were like, is your dad all right with this? I was like, yeah, he's fine. Don't ask
yeah,
him.
he's fine. He's from New York.
Yeah,
Mom's
yeah.
from Madrid. They're cool.
They're cool. And like my grandfather was a big drinker, so he was always like pro like that aspect of things.
Yeah.
But like I took it too far. Like at 13, and I was drunk and
You were drunk at your bar mitzvah.
you know, like telling all my cousins I love them, and like it was too much. And then
Oh, that's gonna be the name of the episode. Drunk at my own bar mitzvah.
so then after that, I think like my parents were probably a little worried because they're like, what is this like 14-year-old doing?
So you kept drinking then?
Yeah.
You kept going to the store?
Yeah. Like, so then like that was like pretty much what we were doing like every weekend. And we would go to the store, and then we would have like because we had nowhere to go, we would go to someone's house, but usually it'd be like 8 or 10 of us.
Piss upping.
Yeah. And until like 16, when you could like get into pubs. And like,
Oh wow, you could get It's
I also
legal,
had my brother was older, so I had my brother's passport.
Okay.
So I would use that. And
Did you? Because I know you have dual citizenship. Was
Yeah.
it the American passport?
So he had a British one. This might be super illegal, but he had a British one that he lost and then was renewed.
Yeah.
And then he found it. So it had never been cancelled.
Yeah, he lost his passport.
Yeah.
Wink, wink.
So
cough,
I would
cough.
use his old passport from like when he was like 7 or 8. And I would like.
But the date.
Yeah, we're 83.
Yeah,
it
so
was
that's
like-
what I'm saying is you could use the date on it and your
Yeah.
kid in the photo, so they don't know.
So that's what would happen. Like everyone would look at the date, and then they'd look at the photo and be like, "Ha, look at like this childhood photo of you." And I was like, "All right, good." They didn't
How long are
ask
passports good for? Like 20
Well,
years?
because it was already expired. It didn't matter.
Oh, you were just using it for the
Yeah,
date.
yeah, but also like it had never been like cut off like
Got
an
it.
old
I see
expired
what you're
one
saying,
had.
yeah.
So I was able to use it. Like even when I came to the States, I used it to 21. Like I used it as
Yeah,
like, my
because it was a few
21
years
fake
older,
ID.
yeah.
And then, dude, there I had like when I was in college, I had a fake national ID card, like an English one.
Yeah.
And once I went to Toco Hill's package store, and it's probably still up there. The guy takes the ID and then puts it up against the wall of fake IDs, and right next to another like fake British one.
Was it really?
Yeah, and he was like, and I was like, all right, I'll just go then.
Oh, this is great.
It's
See,
like,
this is what the show's all about. Ex-drinking buddy stories, man. This
Yeah.
is I always get, not always, but I do get some DMs sometimes, and everyone's like, you talk about comedy so much. It's because it's what I like
Yeah.
to talk about, but
it's like it's also kind of something that like is related in that like I never realized until I started doing comedy that probably one of the reasons I was drinking so much was boredom.
yeah,
Like, is that like I just have a low tolerance to boredom.
mine's anxiety, but yeah, same
Yeah,
kind of thing.
like-
It's like,
But I mean, also I was like 14, and I think I was like, I wanted to be like Eminem. Like Eminem was like
Okay.
my idol, and he was like
I've
the
got
guy.
so many jokes where I reference Eminem.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
swear to God.
Yeah, because like
I
he
tell
was.
people all the time, I'm always like jokingly because I talk about so much violent stuff on
Yeah.
stage. I'm like, I'm the Eminem of comedy.
That would be awesome. Yeah, like he was the guy, and like he was always
Kim
talking
is
about
the greatest love song ever written.
Well,
that's one of the things I say.
that's one of the things. Yeah. But yeah, I see how you ended up.
Yeah.
But yeah, like so when we were 14, that was when that second album came out.
Okay.
And there was a song about
the
like
Marshall Mathers LP.
Yeah, and there was one I can't remember, but it was like
you give me any
drugs
snippet,
what
I
they
know
used to say I was. Oh no, that was no, I can't remember, but it will come back to me. But there was one about like partying and drinking.
Yeah.
And you will just sit there ignoring, even though you wake up feeling like shit every morning. Yeah. So that song came out. And
what's a little bit of spinal fluid between you and a friend?
Yeah. So we were like, we had stolen, or a friend of mine had gotten a bottle of vodka, and we were, I think we were 14.
Wait, stolen?
I don't know if stolen or not. I think not, because I think we could buy it.
There's a big difference when you're telling a story of my friend got a bottle of vodka and we stole a bottle of vodka.
So I've done both, but but like so what I used to do when I went to the States was I would steal it with a few friends, but then we would leave cash where we took the bottle.
Okay, so you're kind of like, we're just taking this because we don't have the idea to get it. We're not stealing
Which I
it.
don't know if it's better, but like I didn't like...
No, it's a lot better because then they don't have to... It's not coming out of their pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
Drug Ballad, by the way. Is
yes,
the name of this
that's it. But yeah, like, so I don't think we stole it. I think we got it.
I didn't look that up for everyone listening. That just came off.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
your
you
M&M
stole
knowledge.
it.
But like, yeah.
But maybe left cash.
Well, yeah, or like in England, what happened is a lot of the times you'd steal it from your parents, like liquor,
that's
whatever.
the same thing in the States.
Yeah. So we were like 14 and we went to this disco, but it was like a little bit of a weird vibe. There was like 4 or 5 of us, and so
all dudes.
Yeah, but like the girls were like, there was like 30 girls, but like none of us knew them, and it was a bit weird. So we had this bottle of vodka, and then we just like pieced from the party, and we went on this like epic journey to like a bunch of different girls' houses.
Really?
Yeah, like
girls
like,
that you knew. How did this happen? Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't know them, but
so
like
it's like a Friday night. You guys go to the disco, and then you're like, "This is lame. Let's bounce."
Yeah, and then like while we're doing that, like one of my friends who's like the only one with the cell phone at the time was like getting all these calls from the girls being like, "Where are you?" And we were like making up stories about. So like in England we would say like people getting jacked, which is like where people getting mugged.
Yeah.
And we were like, our friend got mugged and we had to go like help him out. Meanwhile, we're like downing this bottle of vodka, going like house to house, like fucking. And we finally like make it back to the party, and it's like obvious that we're all fucking drunk,
hammered.
Like, yeah, and they're like 14-year-old girls who were like maybe 13, like they're all sober and like their parents are at the disco.
Yeah.
It's like yeah. It's the type of shit where if I was a parent, I'd be like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Disappointed.
Yeah, but I think my parents kind of knew what was going on, but it was like so above their pay grade.
Yeah,
like because they'd grown up in like a place where like this shit didn't happen, and like yeah, like it just wasn't. My brother wasn't like this. Like, I was just the one like going hard,
reckless. Yeah,
and then like 16, we could get into pubs.
Yeah.
And that changed everything.
So So you've already started to develop a little bit of a habit when it came to drinking.
Yeah,
just because you were doing it every weekend.
It was like every weekend. Yeah, and I don't know if that's. But I mean, in America, it's like that as well. I'd say like everybody under the age of like 23 is functional alcoholic.
Yeah, and I would completely agree with that because when I was in high school and even when I was a child, I always was like, I'm not going to drink because people around me would drink and it was very.
You saw the negative
exactly.
Aspect of
Thank
it.
you. That's the best way to put it. So, and whether it was family, friends, like it doesn't matter. Like just negative things would happen.
Yeah, interesting because I never saw that.
Yeah, so
I just saw it within myself, but I was like, fuck it.
Well, and so I went the other way. So I was always like, I'm not going to drink, but I also didn't I was a dork. Like literally, I was a nerd. I got bullied. I didn't have any friends really at all. Yeah. So by the time I started, and I was always super anxious. So I was always like, I'm not going to drink, but my family, like as far as my siblings, for the most part, all 3 of them were super popular, like had parties, did high school parties, like would drink. So like to your point, they would drink like on the weekends or when parents were out of town, they'd have a good time. And I was always like, I'm never going to do that. Like, fuck that. And then I drank for the first time my senior year of high school.
Okay.
And I've mentioned this before, but my anxiety kind of like went away.
Oh,
and I'm
fuck.
super high strung, like vomit at the drop of a hat, kind of anxious.
Same.
So it went away, and I was just like,
You're like, this is amazing.
This is I found a cure.
Yeah.
Like, this is a miracle.
Yeah.
And so then I started drinking. I didn't develop alcoholism until much later, but then I started, like you said, drinking on the weekends and stuff. But for me, it didn't happen until 17.
Yeah, so you avoided. I mean, also English culture is different because it is a drinking culture.
That's true. Yeah.
And so like at like 16, 17, I remember like football matches, not necessarily because it was difficult. If you went there, they wouldn't always serve you, but like pubs and this pre-smoking ban. Like,
so you could
it was like
smoke and drink inside, baby.
Yeah, and like we had certain pubs that we knew we could get into even if we were underage, which is not a great system. But like there was like one place where like if they ID'd you and you showed a fake, they wouldn't let you in. But if they knew you, they would just let you in.
Oh, really?
Even though they knew you were underage, because everybody was underage.
Yeah. See, I for a long time, because I waited tables in Daytona Beach, so spring break and stuff.
Yeah.
My rule was always, like, especially if it was an out of town ID, if you had the balls to pull out an ID to show me, I was just going to take your word for it. Because I'm not a cop.
No, I think that's the way.
I don't know.
I think that's the way it is here. Because I went out the other night and there was like a group of girls, and like my cousins are like 19 and 20.
Yeah.
And like these girls look younger than them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so I said to the waiter, I was like, are we serving 17-year-olds? Like, what's the thing? He was like, well, if they have an ID, like,
yeah.
He was like,
that's the thing. Is like I can't.
Like, I don't want them yelling at me.
In the culture today, it's like I'm not gonna. What am I gonna say?
Yeah.
This person's like fatter than you.
Yeah.
Like, no,
yeah.
I'm not.
Exactly. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
And it's not. And like, but yeah, like that was kind of what we did. Like, and when it came, I don't know. Like, I don't think I realized it was like a thing until like college. That was when I was like, all right, I'm drinking. Like when
let's get there because that kind of took us off track. So you start drinking at 13, then 14 through 16 almost. You're going every weekend. You're hanging out with the friends. Yeah. Then you turn 16, and now you're getting into pubs.
Yeah. So we also had this crazy punk scene at the time.
Okay.
So we had the Libertines, who were like equivalent to the Strokes.
Oh, wow.
And they were like really big in England, but like one of them was like a heroin addict who was like, he was sleeping with Kate Moss, I think. And they were doing these shows and
shots fired.
They were like, like it was like, it was nuts. Like, so this band, they broke up, I think basically because one of them was a heroin addict and was like robbing the others.
Yeah.
And so, but then when they broke up, he was doing gigs in pubs. And then they got back together, and like, so we went to see them in these like
get the
pubs.
fuck out of here.
Yeah, we would go to like these like little.
And that's the awesome thing about living in London, like living in New York. It's like, you can see some of the biggest names in the world by hopping on a train for 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and so we were like doing that, and also we were like 17, so this was like,
that's awesome.
I idealized it. But at the same point, like sometimes this was like on weeknights, down like 4 pints of Stella, and you're like got to go to school the next day.
Yeah,
and like showing up late and like,
hey, you guys.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but also like I wasn't in like the cool group. This was like the fuck up group.
Yeah,
like this,
and there's a big distinction. Like I've had people on and we'll tell stories, and you're like, wow, that's crazy, and it's like. Yeah, but I was more with the fuck ups.
Yeah, like we were the guys that like there was a few people who were like smart but like not necessarily popular, but they were like smarter. Yeah. And then there were like a few people where you're like, oh, these are the guys.
Yeah.
These are guys that might not make it.
Because it's interesting as the stories I'm starting to realize are almost universal. Like it didn't matter which group you were in. Yeah. Everyone has a story about stealing a bottle and getting hammered.
Yeah.
Now the only difference was it with the popular kids? Was it with the fuck up kids? Was it with the jocks? Was it the nerds?
Once or twice you'd get invited to like the popular kid thing. But it was
you said I never did, but once or twice no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but it was like you'd always get it through like somewhere that you're like,
something,
you're like I don't know if I want to show up to that, and like to be honest, it was like the same, like it was the same kind of thing as the regular kids.
Yeah,
it's just slightly better looking, slightly bigger guys,
slightly more attractive people.
Yeah, like, but like, I often would end up like getting way too drunk at that age. And like ended up like throwing up in the bushes.
Hell
or, like,
yeah!
Someone would have to carry me home. Like once I threw up on someone's jacket.
And this is post 16 or this is pre 16?
Like 14.
Okay.
16, I kind of learned like that I could drink up to about 3 or 4 pints.
Okay, and still
then
be good.
And then like I had to stop because otherwise it's not that I would like get bad, but I would like throw up.
Yeah, you just get sick.
Yeah. Like I just and like. you learn that that's kind of your limit, and like that's how you space out a night. It's like 3 or 4 pints. Good.
Yeah.
But before then, like people would come. Like I didn't know that there was a limit to how much you could drink.
No,
So
yeah,
it's
you
like,
never know.
oh, there's ouzo, there's this. Like fuck it, I just had a bit of everything, and like
I got to try all of it tonight.
Yeah. And we were probably, there was like a different energy in London at that time. Like it was much more, I wouldn't say this was like the Amy Winehouse days. It was a little bit before then, but it was that kind of a vibe.
Okay.
You know, there was like, there was the Libertines. There was like Russell Brand was getting bigger. There was like all this kind of stuff was happening in London. And it was all happening in pubs, in like the back room of pubs.
Yeah, the back alley kind of.
Yeah. And so it was kind of that thing of like the more, how do I describe? Like the more like niche it was, the better.
The cooler it was.
Yeah. And
it was literally the birth of what we would now call a hipster.
Yeah.
The birth of that.
And it was kind of that time where like we did like there was nothing else going on in our lives.
Yeah.
Like I was pretty much against the idea of going to university because I hated school so much.
Okay.
Until somebody said to me, like one of my parents' friends' kids said to me, is like, your parents will pay for you to drink for 3 or 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, all right, I'm in. Like,
so what made you decide to go to school in the United States?
It was like a twofold thing. One was like my brother went to Duke. And
Okay.
I went and visited him and I was like, this is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
The other thing is the accent is so much better with women.
Yeah,
like,
in the United States
Yeah.
than it is.
And so there was also that, but there was also
is the reverse true for that? Like if I were to go to London, would they be like, oh,
it's
you're
a
exotic?
little bit true. Yeah. In a way it is. Like not as much as I think the British one in like Florida.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
But
so
like
not
it
as much as the British here.
Yeah, but there is an element of like, oh, he's American. Like you could get away with things because like people be like, oh, he's American. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't know that that's like not, you know what I mean?
It's not proper. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could make it sway, but there's, I think that like you can, yeah. So basically, I wanted to get out of London.
Okay, so
I
you
wanted like
to
a
leave.
change. Yeah, I wanted like a change in scenery.
And after visiting your brother, you're like, oh,
Fuck it. Yeah, the
this
South is also fucking
Yeah.
cool. And I had like a few people I knew there, and I just kind of like went with it. And then that's when like fraternity life was
So
also
you
super
were in a
interesting.
frat.
Yeah, so I like pledged a frat, but like it was much different. Like it was Emory, so it was like every frat was
It's
kind
a
of
smaller
like,
school, right?
smaller school, and like not that extravagantly difficult. Like
Yeah.
in terms of, but it was also like the first time where I saw like your status in terms of popularity was how cool you were, like rather than like how how cool you were in high school was like if you played rugby or not.
Yeah.
You know, and this was like, no, can you hang? Are you a nice guy?
Yeah, so that's
Are you
something
cool?
that is super interesting to me because, like I said, I was a nerd who got bullied and just had the worst kind of high school experience.
Yeah.
And when I got to college, because I played college football, and when I got to college, I was like, I'm going to change
That's a
who I
huge
am.
Shift, yeah.
So I get to college, and that's what I noticed is that like one of my best friends from college, if you looked at us on paper, you'd be like they're exact opposites. But it's like
But
you're
in
saying,
college, you can make that.
it's
thing.
totally based on just how you connect.
Yeah.
And then him and I ended up becoming like best friends because
That's fucking awesome.
yeah, we both love Star Wars. We both love drinking. He still likes to drink. I obviously don't drink anymore, but like we clicked on a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
And ended up being like best friends.
Yeah, that was like one thing that I was like, this is amazing. Like I'm actually connecting with people. Not like there is status for sure.
Yeah, but it's not
different.
It's not as the line in the sand isn't as so determined.
Yeah.
Like you said, when you're in high school, it's like, oh, do you play sports? Are you a nerd? Do you do this? Do you do that? And that's kind of where all the boundaries are drawn.
Yeah, and in England, like we also, well, I'm sure it's the same in high school here, but there was like a lot of banter, and banter in England can get like, it's like basically if I was thinking about like talking about this on stage, but it's like banter is like it's the same as here, but it's way meaner.
Yeah.
And like you can kind of say anything and then be like banter. Like
oh, like busting balls?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like it gets to the point where it's like I don't know if that's
See,
if that's
that,
like,
I can't. I love that you brought that up because I can't banter with people.
Oh really?
Yeah, because I'm very quick to if you hurt my feelings, let me say the meanest.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I want to
it's like,
destroy you.
Fuck.
There is no joke. Like
Yeah. It gets too far. It gets
yeah.
too serious.
I used to say this bit I try to work it on stage, but it's so mean it doesn't even play as a joke.
Yeah.
And like I go straight to that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No,
and it's like that's not.
You don't know. That's nuclear.
Yeah.
I think I can't remember what I said to a friend once, but I just remember him going, "Too real." Too real. And like also. So we were talking before, like, but soccer was big in England, but it's all about the chants.
Yeah.
So like we would have, so we started a league in our school, like a 7-a-side league.
And this is at Emory?
No, this is in high school.
Okay.
But like, basically what would happen is it was an excuse for everybody to get on the sidelines and like chat shit to people on the football game. So it was like, there was like a Muslim kid who was called a terrorist the whole time.
Jesus Christ.
Like, I can't remember.
Banter,
it was like,
banter.
Yeah, it was like, I can't remember the first part, but it was like, da-da-da-da-da-da, he is a terrorist, Suhaib. It was like, what? Like, it was just like as offensive as could possibly be. And like, it was sanctioned and like encouraged by the school. Like, that's the English kind of mentality. It's very different.
Yeah, imperialistic.
Yeah. And also,
you don't say.
But also, it's like you're supposed to like take it and give it. Like that's kind of the way.
Well, and that's the thing too. Is that's one of the problems that I have sometimes, even to this day, is being around, especially comics, because that's what we do. And sometimes like they're like, oh, we're just joking back and forth. But in my brain, because I'm sensitive, so in my brain, it's like, I'll fucking kill you. Like. I'm a giant. Like, are you out of your fucking mind? And it's like, oh wait, we're just like having fun.
I mean, I've heard some, but like, it's tough when it hits a nerve.
Yeah,
and you're like, oh no,
too real.
But yeah, like, so we did. So I went to Emory, and that was like, dude, people, Americans drink.
Yeah,
Americans drink
pretty good
hard, and it like.
Well, and the difference, I think,
and you're 21, so you recover.
Super fast.
Yeah.
The big difference, though, is I think in Europe, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I've never been, but just from what I've learned over the years drinking and like going out and stuff, is that people from Europe are more, they pace themselves better.
Outside of England, yes.
So it'll be like, okay, I'm going to drink all day, but it's going to be like a beer here and then like a glass of wine for lunch.
Yeah, in England or in Scotland, it's just the same. It's like the same, if not worse. And Ireland as well. Because
in America, it's all right. If we're gonna do this, we're gonna go full bore right now.
One thing I noticed that was like really interesting in like it's with girls, not with men, but like with women, but like young girls, like 18 to 21.
Yeah.
So like in America, it's not okay for you to get so drunk that you can't stand up if you're a girl.
Yeah.
And in England, that's okay. Your girlfriends will take care of you.
Okay.
But in England, it's not okay for you to hook up with like a random guy that none of the girlfriends know.
Oh, that's not okay.
Yeah. So it's like an interesting shift in terms of...
That is an interesting dynamic.
Because it was like something I noticed at some point was like, oh, okay, like that's... Because like girls in England will get like, I can't stand up drunk.
Yeah.
And in America, I didn't see that so much.
Yeah, you see it every once in a while, but it's not.
But it's also like it's often like not acceptable within the girl.
Oh, they'll make sure the next day their friends, because we've had Savannah on this podcast before, my girlfriend, and she talks about her like crew, and how they used to go out and party and stuff, and she's mentioned it before, where it's like everyone watches kind of out for each other. They don't get so drunk that they're making an ass out of themselves.
Yeah, you see, like in England, it's the opposite. It's like, go for it, babe.
Yeah, and then we got your back.
Yeah. And so it's like interesting what's culturally acceptable and what isn't.
Yeah.
Because like in America, both is like for men, it's like, and in England, both is like completely acceptable. So we went, like when I was 17, I was still in high school, but I went to England, Portugal. So I went to the Euro in Portugal.
Okay.
And that was like an eye-opening thing because I'd never seen...
I don't mean to interrupt you, but correct me if I'm wrong. How far away is everything in Europe?
Everything's within 3 hours.
Okay.
So it's like a trip to Florida.
Yeah, because I saw that movie Euro Trip, which is my extent.
Yeah.
And he's
okay. Have you never been?
No.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, and I'm second generation Eastern European. So
okay.
Yeah, like so my grandmother who was born over in the former Yugoslavia, she's always like, you have to go, and I'm always like, maybe one day.
No, you would enjoy it. Even if you're not drinking, it's like to see...
Which is the culture is. I studied history in college, so I'm into that kind of stuff.
It is... but like the European, but also the football thing, and especially the Portuguese were like, it was a crazy game because it was a quarterfinal.
Yeah.
It was England, Portugal.
So you take the train?
No, I flew.
Okay.
And then like the game went to penalties, and somehow they spaced out the England fans and the Portuguese fans, so everyone was just like together in the stadium. Yeah. And so then we lost on penalties, and you're like heartbroken, and all these Portuguese people coming up like draping their flags over you, being like Portugal,
Oh my God,
ole.
dude,
But they're so happy that after about like 3 drinks in, it was
You're just
like,
kind of like, yeah,
it
good
was
for
like,
you.
all right, it's not my party, but I'm here. Like they were like, and it was like, it was one of the most fun nights of my life. Like they were celebrating so hard,
Yeah.
and like I was heartbroken, but I was also like, all right, cool. Like I'm
So
with
you
the people.
take footy, you take soccer serious over there.
Yeah, it's also
Now, are you more, because I know we talked about this before, because shadow producer of the show, my co-host on my other podcast, is a huge Fulham fan.
yeah,
And I asked you who your team was, and you said Fulham.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's fucking bananas.
yeah,
Because Tony Khan, who owns Fulham, was one of my regulars in Florida. My co-host is a huge Fulham fan.
yeah.
My first New York City comic
Is a
on the
Ful-
podcast is a Fulham fan. It's
That's
just
awesome.
it's insane.
It might be your club.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna be a Fulham fan now too.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the national team, is it everyone bleeds red and white?
Yeah,
or?
yeah. I mean,
Okay.
it's also very. It's hard to
Because you hear
describe.
about soccer hooligans all the time, but
Yeah.
I've never met someone who's that into soccer.
Oh my gosh! Like so, my friend was back in England, and like someone who lived on his street who has like a Chelsea tattoo on his head, like came up to like knocked on his door and was like because England went quite far this Euro, and it was
Yeah.
in England. He was like, "Why don't you have a flag out?" He's like, "You got to put a flag out." And like that's how seriously
Yeah,
they
so
take it. Like
you're
he went to
putting-
someone else's house and was like, "Put a flag out."
Put the fucking flag
Yeah,
out. Like,
yeah. Like it's
Damn.
also it's also like a mixture of things because it's very different. Like Americans are optimists.
Yeah.
So like if America is in a tournament, it's like USA, let's go, we can win it. Like we believe it.
We expect to win. Yeah.
Yeah. English people, it's like a weird kind of optimism. Like every year, someone will come up and be like, "This could be our year. This could be it." And then when we lose, it's like I always knew it was just never.
Yeah,
gonna
there's
be.
always that
like
seed of
it's
doubt.
like slightly sad, like but it never happens for us. It's always like really
It was
close.
1966 was the last one,
This is
right?
the last one, yeah, and like we've believed ever since that it could be our year, and like now I do think it will happen in my lifetime because I think that they got the leadership
Well, they've got
right.
some of that younger talent.
Yeah,
too.
and these kids
Why
are
they
good.
put those guys in on the penalty kicks though?
It's
that substitution was
I
just.
feel bad. I don't think they knew what they were doing yet in terms of the final.
Yeah, and you can look at it two different ways. It's like, oh, we'll get the fresh legs in there, and it's like,
but
yeah, but
having said that, like as a long-term goal, these kids will be 23
Yeah.
in the next big
imagine
thing.
being 19.
Yeah, you're gonna
for
build
penalty
some
kicks
tough
for the
skin.
Euro finals.
You're gonna build some tough skin having missed that shit.
I would pee my pants,
Dude, I was like, yeah, like I was watching it. Like I don't think I would do it. I think like you know
Just be
like
no, coach,
like,
I'm
you-
all right.
like I'd be like one of those guys sitting on like the center circle, just like holding my legs. Like no, I'm not going up. I'm
Just-
not going
yeah,
up.
I can't get up.
Dude, you know, like I was talking to a friend of mine recently. This is an interesting question. Would you bring back Robin Williams from the dead to do an hour set, but you had to follow him?
Yeah,
You would do it,
100%. I barely have to hesitate on that.
but you wouldn't feel that thing of like, oh god, I have to go.
Oh
on
no,
after
I'd
this guy.
want to hang myself.
Yeah.
Sorry, bad pun.
But like, you know what I mean? Because like, I'd be like, oh god, I have to follow it. I wouldn't be able to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But like,
Oh,
that's,
now that I'm because immediately I'm just like I would do anything to watch Robin
Yeah.
Williams for one more hour.
yeah. But would you do this?
But then I'm like, oh, but then I wouldn't be able to even. I wouldn't even be able to focus on.
no, you'd be so nervous.
because I'd be. Oh my gosh! Now that I'm actually thinking about it, that's
It's
a great exercise.
question. It's
Yeah.
a great question. Like, yeah, but I think, I mean, the culture is different in England, and also the boozing is like when it comes to football. So I don't think Americans understand this because like I only got this when I went to Portugal. There was a song there, like a lot of this is rooted in World War II.
Yeah.
So there's like a song there when I got there that they were singing, like all these guys, you know, big guys, big tattoos, blah, blah. They're like, there'll be, it was like to green bottles. And it was like, there were 5 German bombers in the air. Then the RAF from England shot one down.
Oh really?
Yeah, yeah. It's like real intense shit. And they're like, you know, like so there's that aspect of patriotism.
Yeah.
And
so it's all
belief in-
rooted in,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
love of country.
Yeah, yeah. And like, so it's different with the national team because there's a kind of like, it's related to childhood as well. Like I remember watching, David Beckham get sent off and then the whole country turning on him. Like our biggest newspaper, The Sun, printed like a dartboard with his face.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah, like
when
they blamed
he
him.
played for Man U forever, right?
Yeah, but then when he was in England, he was 21. He fouled someone and he got a red card.
Okay.
And then we lost that game on penalties and we went out.
Oh,
and
okay.
he was 21 and he became like
the villain.
And like people would
because
like,
of a stupid penalty.
Yeah, like not even. He just like kicked out at someone when he got fouled and he got a red card.
So he gets ejected.
Yeah, so he's ejected and then we lost.
And
so
everyone
blamed him. Yeah. And then he came back. This is very English. He came back and he scored the penalty against Argentina to beat them in the World Cup.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, he's the best, like blah blah. And like that's the English culture is like we're allowed to fucking hate you and create the villain, and we also like love you if you like
that is
make
something
it back.
that I've spoken about on the other show that is so frustrating to me is that aspect of fandom.
Yeah.
Where someone will screw something up and it's like, get this guy out of here. Like,
he's the
fuck
worst
him.
thing ever. Yeah.
And then the very next season, he throws in my case for football, he throws a touchdown pass to open the season. Everyone's like, he's awesome. He's back. And it's like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it's insane. But I remember like I would go and see like Fulham versus Man United and we would like boo him. Like anytime he get on the ball, like he was like the villain.
Yeah.
And then there were other like.
And then he's playing for the national team. You're like, I love this
he's
guy.
the fucking best. Yeah. I always knew, like, yeah. It's like, it's very kind of, you can see how that's like almost drunk emotions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then everyone's drunk on top of it.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a world that like I was kind of introduced to that I could feel like my parents didn't, they didn't know.
They weren't ready for?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because... I mean, your mom, you said, is from Madrid. Does she have is she into,
So she'll drink. She's like, she likes, like a glass of wine.
Oh, okay. But
that
she's
kind
not.
of thing. But she's not like a drinker. My dad's not a drinker. My grandfather was a drinker. He was Iraqi and he would drink like a glass of whiskey every day.
Okay.
That was like his big, that was his big thing. And like, I always kind of admired that culture, like the drinking culture.
Yeah.
And I still drink, but I think it's different in your 30s.
It's a lot different.
Yeah.
I even noticed because I got sober at literally like a few days after my 30th birthday, so I didn't really drink. And not really. I have not drank at all in my 30s. But the thing I noticed in my late 20s was, so there's a line I quote all the time from that movie Burnt with Bradley Cooper, and it's a dumb line, but it really resonated with me because doomed youth is very romantic.
Yeah.
Like when you're in your early 20s and you're getting in trouble and it's kind of like, I'm getting arrested, but I'm a fucking rebel. Like, this is the shit we do.
Yeah.
I'm a comic. I'm grimy. Like, this is it. But doomed middle age is just sad.
Yeah. And it's not, like, I remember, have you read Bukowski?
No, we've had a few people tell me.
But like, I remember reading Bukowski at like 20 and being like, this guy's a badass. And he's like bottling, finishes a bottle of gin every night or a bottle of whiskey every night, blah, blah, blah. And I remember thinking about it like last year. I was like, this guy's a fuck up. Like, I don't know if I could do that.
I'm reading Running the Light by Sam Talent.
I don't know that.
And so it's he's a comic from Denver, but it's a great book. It's a fictional story, but it's about a comic. It's a road dog comic.
Okay.
So it's like we can imagine the scenario. Like, you get a couple of breaks, you become like almost become famous.
Yeah.
And then your addictions get the better of you and you kind of spiral out of control. And now you're just doing like the Ramada Inn on a Tuesday. So as comics, we can relate to the story, and I'm reading that, but the same kind of thing where it's like, if I would have read this book 10 years ago, I would have been like, "This is awesome!
Yeah,
you're doing coke every night, like getting hammered."
Life. Yeah.
And now that I'm sober and I'm older, and I read this book, and I'm just like, "This sounds," because I was that person.
Yeah.
I got rushed to the hospital 2 days after my 30th birthday for alcohol poisoning. And I was told, you should be dead. Like, there's no way you should be alive. And that's one of those things where it's like, I had been to the hospital before for alcohol poisoning in my 20s. And it's like, yeah, man, fucking nothing can kill me.
Yeah.
But in your 30s, I'm
like,
just like,
no, it can.
Yeah,
it
what
can.
the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, this isn't fun anymore.
No. And I think that there's like, I still enjoy it, but on a very loose level.
Yeah. Well,
Like-
that's the thing I always like to, I always make sure to let all my guests know is that what happened to me is not a common occurrence. So like, I always
Yeah.
hate when people come on and look, are you sure we could talk? And it's like, yeah, do it. Cause it doesn't bother me. My drinking got so out of control that I literally was told I should be dead. Like I was dying, physically dying.
Yeah.
And in the emergency room. So whenever people are like, and I make this joke all the time, whenever people are like, man, I need to go to a meeting. I got drunk and texted my ex last night. I go, that's not where you're not even close.
Yeah,
man.
yeah. I remember a friend of mine saying that to me once about like sex addiction. And he was like, I went to a meeting. He was like worried about it. He was like, I went to a meeting. He was like, I'm fine. I'm okay.
I'm not, yeah. I tell
like,
people that all the
right.
time. If you like, I openly open arms. If anybody out there wants to go, I will fucking drive. I'll go with you. We'll take the train together. But like, I always try to let people know it's not.
Yeah, no, it's a disease, and it's like
the reason why is because if you think to yourself, maybe I need a meeting, then you don't need a meeting.
That's interesting.
It's the people who
Yeah.
refuse to think they need one are the
Yeah.
people that need it.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me because it's also not the truth is it like alcohol can make a good time great, but it cannot make a bad time good.
No,
And I realized that about like 22. It didn't mean I stopped. But I just knew
that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, I was
thinking
like-
back on all the stuff I did drinking, it's like if we were having a good time, it was a fucking blast.
Yeah,
but if it was bad, it just got way worse.
yeah, it didn't shift. It didn't make that shift.
Hey, you know what's gonna liven this up? Let's all do shots. It's like
Yeah,
This
it's
is
like
miserable.
no, I'm just sad. I'm still sad.
I'm still sad. I'm just sadder.
And tomorrow is going to be like tomorrow at 4 p.m. It's going to be super sad.
really bad. So I wanted to bring up, this is one of the stories you had on the list.
Yeah.
We were talking about you at college, and then I wanted to bring up, you put graduation. Was that from college or was that from high school?
Wait, where was that? That was from college.
Okay.
That was like a weird night. I mean, I'm sure you had this. In America, it happens more. But you know, sometimes you piece off into another person's group.
Yeah.
And you end up...
No, I don't. I mean, I understand what you're talking about.
Does that
but
never happen with you? You're
I mean,
out with
it
like
has-
some buddies. Well, maybe it's being British. People take like... I've also had a look. Like I'm short. I'm like... I have like kind face.
Yeah.
Like people kind of... They take to me.
Yeah, see, so that...
Maybe 'cause you're bigger. Like
Yeah,
you're
and
more
a lot
intimidating.
of times too is I'm the kind of person where if someone introduces us to each other, or like if we're like the other day I went and played basketball with some New York comics,
Yeah.
and because we're all in the room together, like it's all very standoffish. But then once we
Yeah.
start playing,
Yeah,
same
yeah.
thing at the shows. It's like
yeah.
I'm standoffish, but once we start like watching,
Chatting, yeah.
then we kind of click. So whenever I would go out, a lot of times with friends, unless they introduced me to other people, I kind of just stayed in my own.
Oh, you
world.
see, like when I was in my 20s, I'd talk to like all
Okay,
these
so
girls.
you're that guy. All right.
And so, but also like, so then I met these girls.
So this
and
is
they were-
graduation
yeah,
in
it was like-
Atlanta.
Yeah, it was like maybe 2010. And these girls were like, we went to a bar that was like an older person. That was like 26.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And we met these girls who were graduating from law school.
Ooh.
And so I pieced off with a few of them, like with their group.
Yeah.
And I just ended up, like my friends left the bar and I just ended up staying with them. And then I remember getting back to the house and they were like, and I sent, the last message I sent to my friend before like my phone died was like a picture of me and I was like, just about to take a Xanax. Peace. and then and like, nothing happened. Like I literally like, I slept in bed with this girl and nothing happened. We both fell asleep.
Yeah.
Like, and I woke up the next day and like charged my phone. I had like 20 missed calls from my friends being like, "Are you okay? What the hell is
That's
going
how
on?"
you died?
Yeah. But like that was like for me that was always the most fun, was like meeting people and the shift to like strangers to best friends.
Yeah.
And like
That's the one thing I do love probably more than anything. And I say it in the intro, but that's one of my favorite things. That's why I love having this show.
yeah.
Is because I can meet people.
And it's one-on-one, which makes it a bit more, it's more intimate.
Yeah, and the other cool thing too is that there's no one that can come on this show short of murdering another human being
That you're not like
where I'm not like, I totally get, like, I totally
Yeah.
understand it. I've peed my pants, shit the bed.
man.
Like I've done driven drunk, 2
Wait,
DUIs,
can I
been to
ask-
jail. Like there's nothing
So,
anyone could say in that chair that's
it's
going to be
amazing.
like, what?
It's amazing that you quit, because like to go through that many red lights, like emotionally,
Yeah.
and be like, nah, fuck, I'm gonna keep drinking. That must have been like a huge moment to be like, actually, fuck no.
Yeah, it was
Like,
because so I originally went
and
to
to stick with that.
yeah,
Like,
I originally went to rehab in 2013.
Okay.
I didn't get. The longest amount of sobriety I have is now, which is almost 3.5 years, and that was in
Amazing.
2018 when I got sober.
wow.
But in 2013, long
So
story
you were
short,
25, like around?
yeah, right around there. Long
Cool.
story short, when I was in college, when I stopped playing college football, is when I kind of spiraled out of control.
Okay.
Because I was regimented, so I would just
Yeah.
drink on every other
Yeah.
weekend or something.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And when I would drink a lot, but I would only do it every once in a while because I was
Yeah.
playing. And then once football was over with, again, I was like,
You
well, I know
lost
how to
that
get rid of this
structure, yeah.
anxiety, and I lost
Yeah.
the structure. But then in 2013, what happened was I was living in Oklahoma City with my cousin Tom, and he was doing comedy, and he was like, "Listen, man, you're good at comedy, but like." You just keep getting way too drunk and then getting on stage, and you're embarrassing me. Like
Oh,
you're
wow.
making us look bad. Like
Wow.
we want you to go up, but everyone knows you're my cousin. I'm trying to get you on these shows, and then you go up hammered and do an Arnold impression for 10 minutes and run the light.
Yeah.
Like we
Oh,
can't.
Fuck.
And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
he was like, "Listen, if you can stay sober for 30 days, then I'll start getting you on showcases." And at this
Wow.
point, I had been doing comedy for a few years. Like I
Yeah.
started in 2009, and I was doing like when everyone first
Yeah.
starts, like you do it like once every couple of months.
Yeah,
and
same.
so I was like, okay, bet I'll do that. I was sober for 28 days, and on the 28th day, I started drinking. And I'll never forget. He walked into the back room and said, "What happened?" And I remember I looked at him. I just started crying, and I said, "I don't know." And that's when I was like,
Fuck.
okay, I have a problem. Like,
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
becoming an
not
issue.
like something I could control.
and I was like 25
Damn.
because I thought comedy meant more to me than anything. And he
Yeah.
told me if I could just not drink for 30 days, he'll start booking me on showcases.
And
but
you
I
were
couldn't not
close.
drink.
Yeah, you were so close.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's one of those things where it's like, obviously, this has gotten out of control.
Yeah.
So I called my mom. I was sobbing on the phone, and she got me into rehab. She told me to
wow.
call the number on the back of my insurance card, so I did. She booked a flight for me the next day to
Wow.
Jacksonville, and that's how I ended up in Jacksonville. And I went to rehab. But the funny thing about what you were saying is, you think, okay, that's a bottom, that's
Yeah.
sufficient, that's it.
Yeah.
I didn't even get a year sober, and I started drinking again because I thought I
Yeah.
overreacted. I'm 25.
Yeah, and like everybody's drinking.
Yeah,
and it's
it's-
also like it's not a problem for them. Why is it a problem for me?
Exactly. And so then I
Very
started drinking
difficult.
again, and then lost a fiance, got arrested a few more times, did some significant jail time.
Was that so? Like, was that?
So the jail time I did sober. I was living in a halfway house.
Yeah.
This is when I first went to rehab because it was for a DUI I had gotten years
Oh,
prior.
wow, okay.
So it finally caught up with me. We got
Yeah.
pulled over one day. That's where this is the land of the free and the home of the brave. I don't have to show you
Yeah,
shit.
yeah,
That-
yeah.
I said that to a cop. That's where the bit came from.
Yeah, yeah,
And I got arrested because I had a warrant from a DUI I
Oh,
basically
wow.
skipped town on.
yeah.
So I got a DUI. They released me and I just left.
Damn.
Yeah, and I was still like driving and stuff. And so I did the jail time sober. But then when I had gotten out, I lived in a halfway house for a while and then moved out and then started drinking again. Lost my
Yeah.
fiance at the time,
So
lost
tough.
jobs.
Yeah.
But fast forward to your point, when on my 30th birthday when I ended up in the hospital, that's when it clicked and I was like, this isn't fun. Like this
Yeah.
isn't romantic anymore.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I've got so much material to get on stage about how tragic my life was. This is going to only end one way if I keep going.
Fuck.
And that's like Greg.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like Robin. That's like all of that.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
this
yeah.
is how that's going to end.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not going to be nearly as famous as any of those guys.
And you're not going to enjoy it, or you know.
Yeah. And so that's when I was kind of like, all right, I got to stop.
Yeah.
And I actually took it seriously to the point, we'll bring this full circle to what you were
Yeah.
talking about before with the clown school.
Yeah.
I actually committed and took it seriously.
Yeah.
And then
you notice that it's like shifted your outlook and
everything.
yeah.
So when I
Because it's probably not just the drinking, like sorry to interrupt, but
No,
like
go.
to not to quit drinking, but like also to be like, all right, comedy, like I'm gonna take this seriously, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna pursue it like a job,
yeah.
and that job involves not drinking.
Yeah, so the good thing, and I tell people this all the time, being an addict in the sense that I'm an addict,
Yeah,
it's like having a superpower.
interesting.
Now, the thing that separates superheroes from supervillains is what they decide to use it for.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah.
So when I was drinking, I was very much a villain.
Yeah.
But I could outdrink anybody.
Damn.
And I could drink sick. I could drink feeling good. I could
That's
drink if I
nuts.
had no money. I could find a way to drink.
Yeah.
I could drink if I didn't have a job. I didn't have a place
Yeah.
to live because I've been homeless before. Like I always found a way to drink. Now, when I finally,
that's fascinating. I never thought about that.
It's literally like having a superpower.
Yeah.
There was nothing that could stop me from drinking. Now, when I got sober, the addictiveness is still there. Like that doesn't turn off. Like I'm still an addict. And now I use it for things that are better in my life. I go to the gym 6 days a week.
Damn.
Rain or shine. Doesn't matter if I'm sore, I'm hurting. I go every day, 6 days a week. And it's hard for me not to go on Sunday, but I have to take one day for rest. It's the same thing with comedy. Yeah. I moved to New York City among a pandemic because I wanted to continue to pursue comedy. And comedy for me is so important because when I originally got sober, I was working 2 jobs. I was going to the gym every day, and I called my sponsor and genuinely said to him on the phone, I said, if this is what my life is now,
can't do it. Yeah.
I'm not going to do this. I'm either going to start drinking again or I'm going to kill myself, which is not an idle threat because I've been Baker acted before in the past.
If you start drinking again, you are.
I am killing myself.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not something I meant to like say like to be dramatic or to scare him.
It's just true.
But it was just genuine. I was like, I don't want to do this.
No, I felt that way. I mean, not from drinking, but I felt that way sometimes where it's like, if I don't get on stage and try and make people laugh because you don't always succeed.
Yeah, but
it doesn't matter. It's the
attempt of doing it, and that's what happened. And he said, well, you have to find something that you care about. You have to find something to pursue.
Yeah. And
it was him. He said, what about comedy? And I said, yeah, I love comedy, but I had thought in my head I had wasted so much time drinking and doing drugs and getting in trouble that ship was gone. I was like, I'm in my 30s now. Like I can't start over with comedy. He said, well, just give it a shot. Just try it.
But that's the thing with the comedy is you can always start.
Well, and once you start doing a couple shows, and you probably experienced this too, you were like, oh, I've done this before.
I had a very interesting thing, which is I stopped after Gaulier, I did my show, and then I stopped for 3 years. I didn't get on stage.
Yeah.
And this girl that I'm friends with from Gaulier, I was in Paris. She was like, let's do a show together. And I was so nervous. And I was like, all right. And we had nothing. We had nothing planned. And we bombed harder than I've ever bombed, ever. Like you know how like in improv, they tell you like, don't do this, don't do that. Like don't, she broke all the rules. She was terrible.
Saying no instead of yes.
Yeah, like terrible. Like it was like we bombed like to the point where like I just left and there was like a girl I was friends with in the audience. I didn't even like speak. I just left.
Beelined it out of there.
But like I realized after that, I was like, that was okay. Like I felt fine after the bomb. And I felt much worse not going. That I'd been feeling so bad for like 3 years of not doing it.
It's because you weren't doing it in the first place.
Yeah. And like that fear was not that big. Like, because like, you know, if I go do a gig and I bomb, okay, but I'll learn something and I'll go to the next one.
Absolutely.
But like, if I don't go, I'm going to feel like shit. And that's like...
Yeah, and that's something that I had to come to terms with was... When he mentioned that to me, I went out and I did an open mic in Jacksonville, Rain Dogs. That's like my home away from home. I went out and did it. And then I did a couple other ones like there's a few rooms. And the only reason I'm saying the full names is because some of the people listening are like, hey, I know that place. But then there were a few people who kind of brought me back in. So Chris Buck, who's a comic from Florida.
Well, people recognize game.
Yeah,
right?
well, and he knew me from before. So he was like, all right, you're back, whatever, like... And then once he saw I was taking it seriously, then he started to treat me with a different kind of like almost respect, where he was like, "Oh, he's not being the drunken asshole anymore. He's actually taking this seriously."
Yeah.
And then Christina Shriver, and I give her all the credit in the world. She listens to the show. She's a very good friend. But when I literally first came back in, she let me get up at a mic, and then she invited me to book me on a show, and I had just come back, and she invited me on a show.
Such a boost,
and I was like, "All right,
you needed
like,
that.
let's go."
Yeah.
So comedy, and I tell people this all the time. I take it so seriously because one, I'm an addict, and this is what I've clung to. Yeah. But also, it saved my life on so many different occasions.
Yeah.
Whether I was depressed when I was younger, that's where I got all these scars, and I'd hurt myself.
Oh, fuck, man.
I would watch stand up, and for that hour,
you feel
good.
Something.
You're
laughing.
You
feel connected.
Yeah. And then later on in my life, when I would perform, and I could make other people laugh at horrific shit, and I was like, okay, it's not that bad. Like everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah, exactly. You get that laugh, and you're like. Okay.
Yeah.
Like we can move.
You're relieved. Yeah.
We can do something here. Like,
exactly. And so that's why I take it so seriously, because I've heard people all the way from open micers up to like some of the biggest comics in the world be like, oh, what are we doing? We're just clowns trying to make people laugh. And it's like, to me, it means so much more.
It's much more than that.
Because it literally, I am the example of it saved me.
Yeah. And I also think that it's like, if you get like, if somebody gives you that laugh where you're like, it just, you get like, I had like the other week, I was in London for a long time during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm in therapy, and I was like trying to like get out of therapy. I went for lunch with a friend, and I was losing it. I've been in like quarantine for, and I started crying, and I said, nothing that says that you need to go to therapy, like crying in public at lunch. And I was like, and it was like such a release. I was like, oh fuck, like I did, like I'm like crying, but I'm also like laughing, like all right, it'll be all right. Like that is what is like really, and that's like probably why you start drinking, is like because that feeling happens sometimes when you're drinking. Yeah, and like, but it's better when it happens sober.
It's so much better. Yeah, when I've had shows. Probably the best example is when I did my going away show in Jacksonville. Oh, wow. I had all these people show up. There was like 60 or 70 people at this room.
Amazing.
And I recorded it, so it's the tape I use now when people ask for a tape, because I'm like, well, I padded the room, so why would I not use this tape? Yeah. But it was one of those things where it was just on stage, completely sober, being able to take in the whole moment, and like, all these people are here to see me. Yeah. Yeah. And they're all laughing. Like, the stuff I say doesn't resonate all the time because it is dark. Yeah. And so sometimes it doesn't work. No, and that's totally understand. I totally get it. Yeah. But everyone's laughing, and I'm like, this is exactly what it's for.
Like, it's the feeling of like, I don't want to be anywhere else in the world.
Nowhere else. I'd rather be in the world than on. Even if it's, there's people like, Tom Segura, who's one of my favorites, and Bill Burr. They're playing, 1,000-seat theaters, but it's like, for me, 60 people in the back of a room in a bar it doesn't matter in Jacksonville.
Even for me, like these open mics, you get 8 people. I'm like, all right, let's see.
Nowhere else I'd rather be in the world.
Let's see what happens.
Let's try it.
It can be terrible, but it's like...
But it can also be great.
Yeah, but it's like, we're going to experience something. And like, that is so exciting. Yeah. And also, like, now I feel like we're at the same kind of point where we're like, I'm going to take it seriously now. Yeah. I don't take it for granted. Like...
And that's the thing.
None of that, like, oh, the audience wasn't blah blah. No,
no, it's always
I'm gonna give it 100%, and if I don't leave the stage feeling like I did, then like I never actually, since I restarted, I've never felt like I left the stage and didn't do my best. Yeah, like I've sometimes done badly, but I've never felt like, all right, you did everything you could.
I love that you say that, because there's a couple times where I've gotten a little too big for my britches. Oh, yeah? Where I get on stage, and I'm like, man, I've been doing this since 2009. Like, yeah, I took a few years off, but, like, I know comedy. And, like, I know my material. And then I get up there, and I'm like, I panic. I blank out. I start talking way too fast. My set goes horribly. And I go, this is all of your own fucking fault. Yeah. Like, you thought you could just get up there and wing it.
Yeah,
and,
Like, Philippe used to have a phrase, if you know, you'll die the next day. Because, like, you can never know.
Yeah. You can never
know. And he's like, you don't know why you're funny or what it works, but he's like, and that's what it is. Yeah. If you know, it's over.
It's over. You're already dead. Well, plug everything. This was so much fun. I'm so glad you came on.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Plug everything that you want people to know about.
Food on my Raph. Yeah, because like I started an Instagram because like everyone had it and everyone was like showing off. So I was like, I'll just put food on my head and like just do it like my own way. Yeah. And like and then I'd have like certain people who would like, what the fuck is this? And certain people who like, that's fucking hilarious. So that's food on my Raph, and that's basically it. Just shows in New York. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Man.
Well, thank you for coming out.
Thanks, buddy.
Again, everyone, check out the website, BrennanTComedy.com. Show at Broadway Comedy Club October 7th with the awesome Jill Kimmel. Come out to that. Brennan T. Comedy on all social media, and we will talk to y'all next week. Boom.